The unexpected war. The sky was red that day. Not because of a sunset, but because of fire. From orbit, Earth looked peaceful, but just above the clouds, war had started. No one saw it coming. No news. No warnings. The attack began in silence, just shadows in space. In one of those shadows was a ship, small, fast, and clearly not built for battle. Inside she hid. Her name was Kaila. Not a soldier, not a spy, just a young girl trying to escape. Her world had already fallen. Her people, proud and strong, had lost to a bigger enemy. They called themselves the Varkeen, cold, heartless conquerors. The Varkeen believed in one thing: control. They didn't care about freedom. They didn't care about peace. And they didn't care about lies. Kaila had watched them burn her city. Her mother, her sister, gone in seconds. Her father pushed her into the ship, told her to run. She didn't want to leave, but she ran. She had to. Now her ship was falling toward Earth. Alarms screamed. She held onto the seat, eyes wide, hands shaking. The controls were dead. Her ship had been hit. By accident or on purpose, she didn't know. It didn't matter now. She crashed hard. Metal screamed. Trees broke. The ship slid through dirt and snow, deep in some forest. And then, silence. Cold silence. Kaila couldn't move at first. Everything hurt. Her body, her heart, her spirit. She was hungry, alone, scared. But she was alive. She forced the door open. Her legs gave out. She crawled out into the snow. The air on Earth was clean. Her lungs welcomed it, but her body shook. She had no food, no tools, and no home. She was just a lost girl from a broken world, hiding in a place where no one knew her name. Miles away, a man named Eric was chopping wood near his cabin. He lived alone. He liked it that way. No noise, no stress. Just trees, birds, and quiet. But something strange had happened earlier. The sky flashed. The ground shook. And now something was wrong with the wind. It carried a smell, burnt metal. Eric followed the scent, axe in hand, just in case. When he found the wreck, he stopped cold. A ship. An actual ship. Broken, smoking, glowing blue from strange lights. Not military, not human. He heard a sound. A whimper. He turned and saw her. She was crawling. Bare skin scratched and covered in dirt. Her clothes were torn. Her hands reached forward, but her arms shook. She looked up. Their eyes met. She froze. So did he. For a second, they just stared at each other. A human. An alien. Eric stepped forward. She flinched. He stopped. Slowly, he put down the axe and raised his hands. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he said softly. Of course, she didn't understand, but something in his voice made her stop shaking. Then, Kaila did something that shocked him. She dropped to her knees, bowed her head, and with trembling hands, she held them out in front of her, like she was offering herself. Eric didn't understand. "No, no, don't do that," he said, rushing forward. She whispered something in her language, a word that meant servant. She thought he might kill her, or claim her, so she gave herself up. Eric didn't know what to say. He just saw a broken soul begging to be allowed to live. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her. She flinched, but didn't pull away. He helped her up, gently, like she was made of glass. "Let's get you warm," he said. She didn't understand the words, but the way he said them made her heart tremble. No one had spoken to her with kindness in weeks. Kaila leaned on him as they walked. Her legs barely worked. Her pride was gone. Her strength was fading. She had humbled herself to survive. But in that moment, she wasn't afraid anymore. Not because she was safe, but because a human had chosen not to harm her. And that changed everything. A fire inside her. The cabin was small, but warm. Wood crackled in the fireplace. The air smelled like smoke, pine, and something cooking on the stove. Kayla sat on the floor, wrapped in a thick blanket. Her hands still trembled, but they no longer felt frozen. She stared into the fire, eyes wide. It was like staring into a living thing. On her homeworld, fire was controlled by machines. Cold, clean, perfect. This earth fire, it danced, it breathed. It reminded her of something wild, something alive. She glanced up. The human, Eric, was nearby, stirring something in a pot. He hadn't tried to lock her up. He hadn't tied her down. He didn't treat her like property or enemy. That confused her. She had grown up thinking humans were dangerous beasts. That's what her teachers said. Primitive, they warned. Emotional, violent. Never trust a species that uses fire for comfort. But now she was sitting by a fire, in a stranger's home, and he had offered her food. Eric poured the hot stew into a bowl and placed it in front of her. She looked at it, unsure. "Eat," he said gently, tapping his own chest. "Good." She watched his mouth carefully, then looked at the bowl. It smelled strange, meaty, spicy, rich. Her stomach growled. Cautiously, she picked up the spoon he left for her and tasted it. Her eyes widened. It was incredible. She devoured it. Messy, fast, like a starved animal. Eric didn't laugh. He just smiled and turned away, giving her the space to eat in peace. That night, she didn't sleep. Not fully. She lay on the couch, warm and safe, but her mind spun. Why was this human being kind? Why wasn't he asking questions? Why hadn't he tried to use her? Back on her world, she had status. Her father was a scientist. She was part of a respected bloodline. But that meant nothing now. Her home was gone. Her people had fallen. In her culture, when everything is lost, dignity is the last thing you give away to survive. She had given hers up the moment she bowed. And yet, this human hadn't taken it from her. He'd given her a coat, a home, a bowl of food, kindness for nothing in return. Her eyes burned. She didn't cry, not really. But she wanted to. Not for her past, but for the confusing hope building in her chest. In the morning, Eric offered her clothes. She had never worn anything like them before. Thick boots, wool socks, flannel shirts. He gave her space while she changed. When she stepped out, awkward and unsure, he just nodded with a calm smile. "You look better," he said. She didn't understand, but she felt it. He pointed to himself. "Eric." Then to her. "You?" She hesitated. "Kayla," she whispered. "K-la," he repeated. She shook her head and corrected him. "Kayla." He tried again. Closer. She smiled for the first time. That smile stunned Eric. It was small, tired, but real. He walked to the table and placed a map on it. "Where are you from?" he asked, pointing around Earth's regions. Kayla stared, then slowly, shakily, pointed up. The sky. His eyes widened. He believed her. Not once had he asked if she was human. He already knew. He wasn't scared. He wasn't angry. He was curious. Kayla looked at his rough hands, his quiet strength, his patient voice. Her people feared humans. But maybe they had been wrong. Maybe this species had something her own had lost long ago. Compassion. Later that day, she followed him into the forest. Her body still ached, but she was stronger than before. She wanted to help, to give something back. When he chopped wood, she stacked it. When he hauled it, she carried smaller pieces. She didn't speak much, but he didn't seem to mind. In the silence between them, something new was growing. Not fear, not duty, but trust. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with gold, Eric looked at her. "Why were you in that ship?" he asked. She hesitated. Then with her finger, she drew a flame in the dirt, and then crushed it. He understood. War. He nodded slowly. Kayla looked at him with heavy eyes. She had lost everything. Her people, her name, her place in the stars. But sitting next to this quiet, gentle human, she felt a small fire return. Not the fire that burns cities, but the kind that warms the soul. Names and meaning. Eric was writing something on a notebook when Kayla walked in from the back porch. Snow clung to her boots, and her breath fogged the glass behind her. She still walked like she didn't belong. Quiet, careful, like one wrong step would make everything vanish. But she was stronger now, less shaking, less fear in her eyes. He looked up, smiled, and pointed to the notebook. Language, he said, then tapped his pen on the page. Words. She tilted her head. He wrote one word slowly. Name. Then pointed to himself. Eric. Kayla blinked, then nodded. She pointed to herself. Kayla. He grinned. Kayla. He said it better this time. She smiled faintly. Then, without him asking, she wrote her name in her own language. Elegant lines that curled like vines. Eric stared at it. Beautiful, he whispered. She didn't understand the word, but she knew the tone. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled in the background. The cabin felt warmer than usual. Then Eric wrote something else. Home. And looked at her. Her smile faded. Kayla stared at the word like it was made of stone. Heavy. Cold. Slowly, she took the pen and wrote beside it in her language. Gone. Eric saw the word, even if he couldn't read it. He saw the weight behind her eyes. He didn't say anything. He just nodded once and put the notebook down. She appreciated that. No questions, no pressure, just understanding. Later that day, Kayla watched birds through the window. They flew in circles above the trees, wild and free. I used to be like them, she whispered. Eric, sitting nearby, glanced at her. She hadn't spoken much before. Free? He asked. She nodded, then mimicked wings with her hands. Not anymore. He leaned back. You're still free. She frowned. He pointed to the door. You can leave any time. She looked confused. I didn't keep you here, he said softly. You chose to stay. That hit her like a quiet storm. She thought back to when she first arrived, how she had dropped to her knees, offered herself, begged to be taken. And yet, not once had he treated her like a servant. Not once had he asked her to clean, serve, or obey. She had been acting like a servant because she thought she had to. But she never had to. He was giving her a choice, something she hadn't had since the day her planet fell. That night, Eric showed her the stars. They sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, their breath fogging in the cold. He pointed up. That one's Mars, and that's Jupiter. She watched quietly, her eyes glowing in the starlight. He turned to her. Which one was yours? She didn't answer, just stared into the dark sky. I don't know, she said after a while. They're all just lights now. He didn't speak after that. He just passed her a cup of tea and sat with her in the silence. And somehow, that silence meant more than words. The next morning, Kayla did something unexpected. She cooked. Badly. Eric came into the kitchen to find a mess. Flour on the counter. Something sticky on the floor. The smell was strange, not bad, but alien. She looked at him nervously. Try. He blinked, then smiled. He sat down, took a bite of the strange dish. It was awful. But he finished it. Kayla laughed quietly when he coughed at the last bite. It was the first time she had laughed in weeks. He tapped his chest. Teacher, then pointed to her. Student. She tilted her head. Student. He nodded. You learn. She nodded slowly, then touched her chest. Kayla. Learns. Eric smiled. Exactly. He tapped her notebook, still open from yesterday. She picked it up. Today, she wrote the word hope. He smiled at her spelling. It was perfect. A storm in the snow. The wind howled that morning. Snow came down hard, fast, like tiny blades. Trees swayed. Ice crept across the cabin windows. The storm had arrived. Eric moved quickly. He knew this kind of weather. He stacked wood near the fireplace, checked the backup generator, filled water buckets, just in case. Kayla helped where she could. Her fingers still weren't strong, but she carried logs inside, holding them close like they were treasure. "You stay in," Eric said, pointing to the couch. "It's bad out there." Kayla looked out the window. Snow danced like ghosts. She had never seen a storm like this. Her planet had harsh seasons too, but this was different. It was quiet and violent at the same time. Still, she felt safe inside, warm, cared for, until the power went out. The lights blinked, then died. The heater shut down. Eric cursed under his breath and grabbed a flashlight. Kayla froze. "Not safe?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. "We're fine. Just cold if we don't act fast." He lit candles. The soft orange glow spread across the cabin, flickering shadows on the walls. The fire still burned, strong and steady. That helped. But the real trouble wasn't the dark. It was what he saw outside. Tracks. Fresh ones. Not animal. Boot prints. Eric opened the gun cabinet. Kayla stepped back. He looked at her and softened his voice. "I won't hurt you, but someone's out there." Her eyes widened. "Enemy. Maybe." He loaded the rifle, then pulled on his coat and boots. "I'll check it out." "No," she said quickly. "Danger." He nodded. "That's why I'm going." She grabbed his sleeve. For a second, her eyes begged, "Don't go." But he smiled gently. "I'll be back." He stepped into the storm, leaving her standing at the door, heart pounding like drums. Eric stared at the scar, not with pity, with respect. "You survived," he said. She nodded. "But I never forgot the sound." She sat down again. "Sometimes," she whispered, "it's not the wound. It's what stays after." Eric nodded. "Scars you can't see." She looked at him sharply. "Yes." He tapped his chest. "This one's bigger," he said, "but no one sees it." She reached out slowly and placed her hand over his heart. Just for a second, then pulled it back. Not romance, not flirting, just truth. Two people, both broken in different ways, sitting in the same place, helping each other carry the weight. That evening, Kayla asked a question she'd been afraid to ask. "Why? You helped me." Eric looked surprised. Then he gave a half smile. "Because you needed it. No one else would," she said. "Maybe," he agreed. "But that's the problem, isn't it?" She tilted her head. "Most people wait for someone else to do the right thing," he said. "I stopped waiting." Kayla thought about that. Then said, "My people, we watched planets fall. We studied, talked, argued, but didn't act." She looked away, ashamed. "I was proud. I thought my world was wise. But we were cowards." Eric shook his head. "You're not a coward." I bowed. I begged. I gave myself away. "You survived." She blinked. "There's no shame in wanting to live," Eric said softly. "There's strength in that. Real strength." Kayla felt something rise in her chest. Not pride. Not shame. Something new. She didn't know the word for it, but it felt like healing. That night, she didn't sleep on the couch. She sat by the window, looking at the stars. Eric sat beside her. She pointed to one. "That was near my home," she whispered. He nodded. "Do you think," she asked, "a person can lose everything and still become someone new?" Eric looked at her. "Yes," he said. "I think sometimes that's the only way we grow." She smiled. A real smile. And for the first time since she crashed on Earth, she didn't feel like a servant, or a refugee, or a burden. She felt like Kayla again, not the girl who begged, but the girl who survived. The signal no one wanted. The days grew quieter again. Snow melted slowly. The forest was still, almost peaceful. Kayla started to smile more. She even hummed once while stacking firewood. Eric noticed, but said nothing. He didn't want to break the moment. They had fallen into a rhythm, a kind of unspoken life, until the sound came. It was just after midnight, a low, distant pulse, like a heartbeat made of metal. Kayla sat up on the couch, her body stiff. She knew that sound. She had heard it before. Eric came in from the back room, rubbing his eyes. "Did you hear?" She was already at the door. The sky above the forest glowed faint blue, blinking in a strange pattern. Not natural. Not Earth-made. Her heart dropped. "That's a beacon," she whispered. "Rescue signal." Eric frowned. "Yours?" She shook her head. "No, not ours. Varkeen." The name felt heavy in the room. Eric tensed. "The ones who destroyed your world." She nodded slowly. "They search. For survivors. For tech. For control." Eric's hand went to the rifle by the door. "They're coming." Kayla didn't answer. She didn't have to. By morning, the snow had stopped, but the fear hadn't. Kayla stood near the window, wrapped in Eric's old jacket. Her eyes scanned the woods. Every bird call, every rustle made her flinch. Eric had turned off all lights. He covered the windows with blankets and checked his supplies. "We can run," he said. Kayla shook her head. "They'll find us. They always find." Eric stared at her. "Then we fight." She looked at him, stunned. "You don't understand," she said. "They don't stop. They don't fear." "I've faced worse," Eric said calmly. "No," she whispered. "You haven't." Her hands were shaking again. Old fear returned like poison in her veins. She had escaped the Varkeen once. Barely. Now they were here. And they would not show mercy. Later, as the day dimmed, Eric set up traps around the cabin. Tripwires, flares, signals. Kayla watched him work. He was focused, steady, quiet. Not angry. Not panicked. Prepared. "How do you stay calm?" she asked. He glanced at her. "Because I have something to protect." Kayla didn't reply. Her throat tightened. She realized no one had ever said that to her before. Not her father. Not the soldiers who hid her. No one. Eric had just made her feel like she mattered more than fear. Night fell fast. The beacon's glow was gone, but the silence it left behind was louder. Kayla sat at the table, sharpening a metal rod. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was something. Eric walked in with a small box. "Got something for you." She opened it slowly. Inside was a small earpiece with a translator device attached. She blinked. "I fixed it up using parts from your ship," Eric explained. "Might not be perfect, but now we can understand each other better." Kayla stared at it like it was gold. She placed it gently in her ear. A soft click. Then, his voice. Clear. Warm. "You okay?" he asked. She gasped. I can hear you." He smiled. "Good." She covered her mouth with her hands. Her eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she heard someone speak to her, and she understood every word. It was like breaking out of a cage. "Thank you," she said, voice trembling. Eric stepped closer. "Whatever happens next, we face it together." She nodded. Then, for the first time, she reached out and held his hand. No fear, no shame, no doubt. Just strength passed between two people who had nothing left to give, except each other. An hour later, the first signal jam hit. The radio crackled and died. The translator glitched for a second. Kayla looked up. "They're close." Eric nodded. He checked the rifle. She gripped the metal rod. Outside, the wind shifted. A faint hum filled the air, unnatural and cold. The Varkeen had arrived. And this time, they had come for her. Dignity in the fire. The sky above the forest pulsed with blue light. Cold, silent, watching. Eric stood at the window, rifle in hand. Kayla stood beside him, holding her homemade weapon. Her fingers no longer trembled. She was done running. "They'll search," she said. "They always do. They scan heat, movement, energy." Eric nodded. "Then we make noise first." Kayla turned to him. "They won't stop unless I surrender." "You're not giving yourself up," he said flatly. Her voice was quiet. "If I don't, you'll die too." Eric looked her in the eyes. "Maybe. But I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees." Kayla blinked. Something in her chest shifted. It was the same thing she saw in his eyes when he first found her. Honor. Not the kind her people wrote in books. The real kind. The kind that acted when no one else would. Outside, the humming grew louder. The snow lit up in blue shadows. A ship hovered above the trees. Dark, sharp, built for fear. Kayla stepped out first. Eric followed. Cold wind whipped her hair. Her jacket flapped in the breeze. But she stood tall. A voice echoed from the ship. It spoke in her language. "Surrender. You will not be harmed." She replied with no fear. "I have already surrendered once. Never again." The voice paused, then changed tone. "You are property of the Empire. Step forward, or we erase the human." Kayla's jaw tightened, but Eric stepped forward first. "No," he said. "You'll have to erase both of us." The translator crackled. Kayla heard his words, understood them, everyone. She reached out and held his hand. "I am no one's property," she shouted at the ship. "Not anymore." Light flickered, weapons charged. Eric raised his rifle, steady as ever. But because it had already lost, the moment a servant stood tall beside a human who treated her like a person, not a thing. The next morning, the sun came out for the first time in days. Kayla stood outside, watching the light hit the trees. Her hair shimmered. Her face looked different now, not softer, but stronger. Eric handed her a mug of hot tea. "They'll come back someday," he said. Kayla nodded. "Let them." He smirked. "You're not scared anymore, though." She smiled gently. "Not with you beside me." Then she turned to him. "I want to build something," she said. "A place. Not just to hide, but to live." Eric raised an eyebrow. "Here." She looked at the trees, the sky, the soil. "No," she said. "Bigger." He chuckled. "You sure know how to dream, alien girl." She held out her hand. "My name is Kayla. Not a servant. Not property. Kayla. And I choose to stand." He took her hand. "And I choose to stand with you." Far above Earth, the ship transmitted its report. Subject refuses classification as servant. Human interference is strong. Resistance is unexpected. Recommend re-evaluation of Earth's threat level. The stars blinked. And somewhere out there, the galaxies started whispering. About a girl who chose dignity. And the human who refused to let her fall.